Welcome, everyone. We're about to get started.
I see it. Good afternoon. How is everybody?
Good, good. How are you doing, Mary?
Good. A little bit of technical trouble on my end. So hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Mary Groth. I'm Director of Member and Donor Communications here at the Bar Association. And our program today is for law students and new lawyers on the importance of having mentoring relationships and how mentors can help you in law school and beyond. We have an all-star panel today of presenters. These are each lawyers here in Cleveland who are also members of the CMBA and who have been leaders in all sorts of different positions. And I'm not going to steal their thunder, but they'll introduce themselves and talk about their careers and give you some benefit of their experience, both as young lawyers and also as mentors through their career path. It's important. Mentors are very important. It's important to have a positive relationship with mentors throughout your career. They can make all the difference, I think, to have a sounding board, somebody that you can talk to, listen to, learn from. And it's a different relationship than a relationship you would have, say, with a professor or even an employer. So we're going to dig into the details of mentoring. And then we will also encourage questions throughout the program, and we'll have a question and answer session at the end. So our panel today includes Mark Young from Roetzel and Andress, Kathleen Nitschke from Giffen and Kaminsky, and Matt Secrist from Squire, Patton, Boggs. And we're going to start today with Mark Young. Mark is going to introduce himself, talk about his practice, and give you perspective from his point of view in terms of what it's like to be a mentor and how a mentor can help you. Mark?
Oh, thank you so much, Mary. It's good to be here with the panelists, Matt and Kathleen. As Mary said, I'm Mark Young. I'm a shareholder at Roetzel and Andress. This August, I will have practiced 19 years, believe it or not. I think I had hair when I started practicing, and I truly enjoy it. I really never thought I would be an attorney, so I think I bring a little bit of a different perspective. I actually wanted to play professional soccer growing up or become an athletic director of a major D1 school. So I guess practicing law might be second to that or close to that or polar opposites. But either way, it's a fresh perspective of what I do. And I had to learn to become a lawyer, if that makes sense. There were no attorneys in my family, mother, father, cousins, grandparents. So it was nice for me to learn on the fly. And so as I speak to young students, I always want to encourage you, there's no perfect mold to be an attorney. I think you craft your own path, you make your own story, however you want that story to be written. It doesn't matter the practice of law, it's about how you want to write that story. So, you know, I met a lot of people who are different practice groups. They might enjoy things like art. That can also be a great venue to what you practice. A good friend of mine is now into art law, which I didn't know much about over at Han Lozier, and he was explaining to me the intricacies of that type of practice. So I encourage you to just mold what you do into your practice and enjoy what you do. What I do at my firm is I handle a lot of commercial litigation, somewhat banking litigation. That is probably 60% of what I do. The other 40%, I have a transactional practice where I act as outsourced general counsel to maybe 20 to 28 businesses throughout Ohio and some of the neighboring states to help them as they work in their business operations. That may include litigation or may include what I'll call more of business counseling. And I enjoy the hybrid of those two because it's never the same thing every day. In terms of mentoring, I like to think that the presentations that I give and the thought process I have, I don't know if I really had a mentor until I look back and realize that I did. We all have. It just, they might have taken on a different term. Maybe your favorite teacher, maybe your sounding board, maybe your advocate, someone that you enjoyed, but there's always 1 to 5 people you've gone to throughout your life with good advice. And what I would suggest as you hear the presentation is to listen to Kathleen, Matt, myself, take a few of those tidbits with you to kind of either start what you want to start or enhance what you're already doing.
Next, we'll hear from Kathleen.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I wanted to start out my comments by really applauding all of you for watching this video or being present on the webinar. I don't know that when I was a law student, I don't know, a decade or 2 decades or more ago, that I had the forethought to be thinking about having a mentor and what that would mean and how that might help me in my career. It wasn't something that was overly talked about when I went to law school. So I think you're already way ahead of the curve by being here. So I want to really thank you for that and know that you're on the right path to what is good for your career. I am a partner at Geffen and Kaminsky. I do a lot of the same things Mark does. I represent corporations and banks in commercial litigation. I also do a fair amount of real estate. Most of my real estate practice is litigation. So I see a lot of courtrooms and talk to a lot of judges. And if you would have asked me when I started law school if that's where I would end up, I would have told you absolutely not. I would have told you that I would have been a child advocate or a legal aid attorney or something along those lines. And the one thing that I think is important for you to know and mentors can help you along the way with is no legal career is a straight line. You will bump all over the place with what firm you want to be with, the size of the firm you want to be with, I did plaintiff's personal injury work when I first started practicing. Then I did insurance defense work before I ended up where I am now. And I've been where I am now since like 2005. So, sometimes it takes a little bit to bounce around until you find your groove and find where you belong and find the thing, as Mark said, that you're passionate about and that you enjoy doing. I have a little bit of a different story than Mark. I decided at 9 years old that I was going to be a lawyer. I read the book To Kill a Mockingbird. There was something about the story and the sense of justice in that book that made me think that, yeah, this is what I want to do. I set out with the mindset to do that at a very young age, which is kind of crazy now that when I think back on it. And I think that, along the way, I did have mentors through college. I think I had more peer mentors in law school than I had from professors or, employers. I worked at legal aid all through law school. And while it was a really good experience, thinking back on it, I didn't have a particular mentor there. But what I want to tell you is that I went to law school in Michigan State. And then came to Cleveland after that. I'm not a Cleveland native. So when I landed here with a law license, I didn't know anybody in the legal community in Cleveland. And I'll be honest, I fumbled around for my first year of practice trying to figure out what I was doing and how I could make connections and what kind of career I was going to have here. And I will tell you this, join the Bar Association. That is, get involved in things. That is how everything changed for me. I joined the bar, I got involved. Like legal aid brief advice clinics are great. It's when you start to make those connections and you start to open yourself up to meeting other people that you'll find that you'll have folks not only who want to be mentors, but who really can have a relationship and trust them and feel comfortable being mentored by them. So I think that as we talk through this today, I think we all have now looked back on our legal careers over maybe 2 decades for some of us. It's made us think about the choices we've made along the way. But none of the choices I could have made, I would have been able to make without a mentor and someone to advise me along the way. So again, thanks for listening, and I'm glad you guys are here today.
Matt, how about you?
Thanks, Kathleen and Mark. I haven't been practicing for 2 decades, but I think it's about like 12 or 13 years now. So I'm it's been a little bit of time since law school for me as well. So I'm with Squire, Patton, Boggs. I'm an employee benefits attorney. So what does that mean? Basically, I represent companies and I help them with their pension plans, their 401k plans, their health insurance plans. It's basically how people get paid in a company. You asked me how I got into that. I just kind of fumbled into it. I would say it wasn't by design or anything. I'm also, like Kathleen, I'm not from Cleveland originally. I'm originally from the Pittsburgh area. And when I was little, I always remember my sister was always kind of like the bookworm. And I would see all these books in her room. And I remember this to this day. I was like organizing her books because it's like a punishment my parents gave me. He said you had to organize her books. And I was like, I could never be a lawyer or anything like that because I can't read all this stuff. And somehow I became a pension lawyer. Go figure. I don't know. But so I grew up in the Pittsburgh area. I went to a small community. At first, I wanted to be an accountant. So I went to school to be an accountant. I figured after my first couple accounting classes, hey, I don't want to do that. That's too boring. So I went to finance and I graduated in Pittsburgh. And I wanted to be like a financial analyst and that, but there weren't that many jobs with that where people were just undergrad. So I ended up, by happenstance, I asked around my family and I found out we had one attorney in my family and she was in Cleveland. And she said, well, come to Cleveland, go to Cleveland State or Case. I chose Cleveland State and come live in my basement. And so I moved to Cleveland, packed up my bags. I started the CMBA program in Cleveland State, and there I still didn't know what I wanted to do. To be honest with you, I really wasn't sure. I clerked at the prosecutor's office, so I wrote briefs there during my first and second year. My second year I took a tax class. I seemed to like that, so I started to work for a tax boutique firm over in Westlake. My cousin lived in Aurora, still does. So that was a bit of a hike. I was working basically full time when I was going to law school, and I would drive from Aurora in the morning and go there, work in the morning, then back and forth. And when I was at the tax boutique firm, I ended up being assigned a random pension plan project. And ever since then, I just been a pension lawyer somehow, because it's funny how life turns out. You never know. Like I knew about pensions growing up because my dad was a steel worker and he had a pension. I knew this general concept, but I never like fully understood everything. And somehow I took that very first project. I guess the one thing I would always tell people is never turn down work, no matter what it is. Because if I wouldn't have taken that first pension project, if I would have been scared and say, hey, I don't know anything about this, or I wouldn't be here where I am today. So that's like one piece of advice I would say. And as far as mentors, I would say I've had a lot of mentors throughout my career. I had my cousin. I've had people in the Bar Foundation. It's really just kind of who you make it. You just got to be willing to kind of make friends, throw yourself out there and meet good people and just ask for advice where you can get it and just kind of just take everything in and try to make your own judgments and know that if you meet good people, they kind of have your interest in mind, and just be willing to listen and be willing to take on new things. Here I am at Squire. I'm a pension lawyer, and I'm happy to help anyone that's looking for a mentor and needs just like a sounding board. And thanks, Mary, for inviting me here.
Oh, happy to have all three of you. Well, your experiences are different but the same, and I think that a lot of times law students think about coming out of law school with one idea in mind about what they're going to do. It seems to me that for most lawyers is not actually the way it turns out. And I think that's another reason why in law school it's important to explore careers, and as Matt said, sort of dig in where you can. You never know where that's going to take you. Mark, where did you go to law school? And can you share a little bit about your law school experience?
Sure. So I went to the University of Toledo. I took 2 years off between undergrad down at Wake Forest and moving back home. I'm from the Cleveland area to go to law school. And it was a very good experience. It was unlike anything else that I had. And I'm sure anyone who's in law school is laughing now because, you hear the same terminology. Law school is a different animal. And now I'm still saying that many, many years later. But I think a couple things that I truly enjoyed about law school was you meet people from across the whole fiber, of life. So accountants, there's a night program there. So there were a number of students that I met there. Actually, one person was a very high-ranking top surgeon who was going back to get his law degree. So it was kind of neat to speak with him when we intersected and had night classes. As well as, and I think Matt hit the nail on the head, and you, Mary, just most recently, law school is a time where you really want to explore. And I teach an adjunct class at Cleveland State at Marshall. And one thing I really try and emphasize is everything is free. If you want to join the environmental bar, if you want to join a corporate related, if you want to join the inner courts, a litigation related entity that I was a part of, which is an excellent opportunity to meet other practitioners and judges and administrators, but everything is free and everybody will welcome you into that. So I really encourage you to take that opportunity, join anything you want to do, gain some experience. If you like it, do a little bit more. If you don't, maybe shift your focus to something different, because that's a perfect 3 years of trial and error where you really have a safety net. Once you start your practice, whether you're on your own, whether you go to a firm, you're going to have very limited marketing budget. So they're not going to let you join 15 different organizations. So you really want to know by the time you come out what your general interests are, and then you can hone in over time. And I wish I would have taken more advantage of that in law school. I took advantage of some of that, but with a little bit of hindsight, I think that's a real good thing to keep on your plate.
I think that's great advice. I think that a couple of thoughts. If you're a student here in the Cleveland area, the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association has free membership for law students, and you get all the benefits of membership, being a part of our group. And one of the things that I've seen develop, kind of watching law students kind of transitioning from school to work to careers, is they've gotten involved in something that they've been passionate about. Say they're on a 3 R's team, or they do the brief advice clinic, as Kathleen said, at Legal Aid. Those opportunities open up a lot of doors. One, the door for you to find out kind of what you're interested in, but the chance to meet people that are already working in the profession, the chance to interact with other law students, maybe from other law schools. I think any opportunity you have, there's a mentoring component of that as you're learning and growing kind of in knowledge and in experience. And I always tell people, I have 2 adult children now too, but I always tell them, you don't grow if you don't push yourself out there, and you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone sometimes. If you tend to be a shy person, a loner, that doesn't help you, especially in law school, because you're not making the connections you need to be able to thrive. So I would encourage you to join. As Mark said, there's tons of things on campus and at law schools, from student organizations to particularly focused experiences, clinical experiences. The Bar Association has a lot of different things that we offer, but find something that you can explore and really take the time to get to know the people that you're working with in those settings. We actually welcome law students on our committees here at the Bar Association. We have law students on a number of committees, and with virtual communications, if your schedule doesn't permit you to run down here, you can be on the phone or on Zoom with us. And what a great experience that is. I've seen law students that have been on committees that now are litigation managers and practice managers at their law firms that are doing great in the solo practitioner area. And they sort of started, you could tell that they were exploring all the options, but they started really opening doors in law school and finding mentors to help them determine what is the best path. So I can't encourage engagement enough, as Mark said. And as Matt and Kathleen said, this sort of experimental, try something, see if you like it. You're not going to find out unless you try something whether or not you like it. So I want to talk a little bit about your own experience with mentors. Like, can you remember in your life, in your career, maybe a couple of strong mentors, how you met them, and maybe some of the best advice you got?
Is that for me, Mary?
Sure. We'll start with you, Mark.
Sure, absolutely. I think a couple things. One is, keep in mind, everyone is always watching you. My father used to tell me that, and I never understood that. You know, one funny story is one year they hired me to paint the house, and I painted 3 sides, but not one side, because you come in one way where I grew up. So of course, when my mother came the opposite way, that was not a good look for a 13-year-old who didn't do what he was supposed to do. But the point is, everyone is always watching you. So even before, if you join an organization, if you volunteer, are you on time? Have you read the materials? Do you raise good questions? Are you active and participating? These are the kind of things people are watching you, even when you don't realize that. So I would suggest to you, make sure to build your own good habits before you kind of go out and solicit a mentor, because you never know, someone might approach you. If you're doing those kind of things in volunteering or on a board or socially, people might say, hey, John, hey, Sarah, you've done a good job. What are you interested in? Maybe we should grab a cup of coffee. So I would always keep those opportunities open, because mentors might find you. It doesn't necessarily have to be a one-way street, you looking for them. But in my life, I think I've had some very good mentors, and it hasn't necessarily been towards law. Just growing up, my high school soccer coach, one of my dear friends, would always give very good advice. He was a Spanish teacher at my high school here in Cleveland, just a worldly person who really cared about the character of who you were as a person. Whether we won games, if you didn't shake hands, you're running laps. And so you just really internalize those type of folks that look out for your best interests. So that was probably my first introduction to someone you could go to and speak with that would always give you good advice without any strings attached. And then as you grow in your career, college, law school, any other graduate program, and work, my suggestion to you is find those people that you believe would give you good advice. And I suggest to you, remember, a mentor is not a yes person, but a mentor is also not necessarily your parent or your friend. So you have to understand the parameters of what that relationship would be. And thinking about a mentor, I kind of think of a continuum. If you have a step 1 through 10, a mentor would be maybe step 5. And I would encourage you to prepare yourself. What are you doing to be the best you could be? Are you achieving your metrics in your job, whether it's billable hours, whether it's generating revenue by bringing in clients, whether it's community service, whether it's speaking for the CMBA or other avenues? What are you doing to enhance your craft? And number 2, what path have you charted for your craft? If you've practiced 3 years and you say by year 6 or 7, I'd like to be a partner, what does that mean in your mind? And then maybe you gravitate towards some folks that have been there, done that, or on the verge of doing that to help you bridge that gap. In my personal opinion, I'm more of a 3 to 4 year mentor than maybe a 20-year mentor. So if you are maybe 1 or 2 years out, maybe finding someone who's just retired is not your best avenue, but maybe someone who's a 5 to 6 year, high producing associate or high producing individual at their respective public law practice that can tell you what they did in those 5 or 6 years to get to where they are. Once you reach that mark, maybe now you look for someone who's 10 to 12 to 13 years out and go from there. Because I think once you can capture those gaps of time and reach those incremental goals, I think it becomes a lot easier than to set, for example, a 10-year goal and possibly get frustrated. I think the other thing I'd say for me is I try and find mentors in all different disciplines. So if someone is a very good business person and I admire the steps they took, I'd like to maybe get coffee with them or get lunch with them once a quarter or once every 4 or 5 months. Maybe there's a law practitioner. Maybe there's just someone generally in the community that I like. Every time I open the Plain Dealer, they're speaking about Cleveland or Destination Cleveland, and maybe I gravitate to learn more about them. So I think you need to broaden the scope and figure out if one or multiple mentors are best for you and how to go about finding them.
Kathleen, how about you? How have you worked with mentors, and what's some sage advice you received from mentors that you still think about and perhaps pass on to students and others who you mentor yourself?
Sure. So in preparing for today, I was thinking back on, since I've been barred, the mentors I've had and how they've come into my life and the advice they've given me. And I have to tell you that one of the things that I noticed, and I think is great advice, is don't just look for mentors who look like you. I mean, don't, you know, some of my best mentors were people, you know, men who were, you know, quite a bit older than me. So they come in all shapes and sizes, and don't discount because they don't do what kind of law you want to do, or they're, you know, 40 years older than you, or, you know, whatever, that they won't be an effective mentor. You'd be surprised. One of the first mentors that I had once I joined the Bar Association was a practitioner who sat on the grievance committee. I sat on the grievance committee. That was one of the things that I joined when I joined the bar and really decided to get active, because that was an area that I felt I could contribute to, and it was interesting to me. I wanted to be a part of, you know, what goes on with disciplinary issues within our own profession. And there was I think he was almost retired at that point, attorney who sat on that committee, and he just took me under his wing. There was no like affirmative, like, will you be my mentor? Yes, or let me take you under my wing. It was all just sort of just happened. And he took me under his wing, and every time he would get a trial committee assignment, you know, he would add me to his trial committee so I could get the litigation experience. And he would take me to lunch, and he would, you know, we have grievance committee meetings on monthly, you know, it was his monthly check-in with me. And so I don't know that I really understood that I was, you know, in a mentoring relationship at the time, believe it or not, but now looking back at it, it really was a valuable relationship that I had with him. I have mentoring relationships with folks inside my firm. I have mentoring relationships with people outside my firm. I'm very lucky in that my firm really concentrates and feels that mentoring is really important. I've had, you know, the folks who who are named partners at my firm are two of my biggest mentors, and have been for a very long time. So I think that, you know, my advice would be, one, don't discount someone being your mentor just because they don't do your area of law or don't look like you, or, you know, aren't a man or a woman or whatever. The second piece of advice I have for you is, don't turn down opportunities for people to take you under their wing. I've seen many a time where, you know, we've been contacted, or I've been contacted, my colleagues have been contacted by a law student who wants to talk about, you know, coming out of law school and starting a career. And we're always having coffee and to have lunch with them. But sometimes, you know, there's a follow-up and then you don't see them again. And so, you know, you want to be the person that, you know, that they feel like they can call, and you want to be that person who feels like you can help someone along in their career. So don't turn away opportunities just to have, if for anything else, to get to know the person, to get to know what they do, and to have that connection, because that connection might just come around, even if it's not in the short term, in the long term, to be a great benefit to your career later.
How about you, Matt?
Yeah, I heard some really great advice. I just kind of add on to it. The one thing about that I've always found about mentors is a lot of it, I want to say a lot of it comes naturally. It's basically, it's a growing type of relationship. You're not going to call somebody out of the blue and say, hey, will you be my mentor? It kind of just happens organically. So thinking about some of my biggest mentors, I had one when I first started right out of law school. Right out of law school, I started at Ernst & Young rather than a law firm. So I started out in an accounting firm, and, you know, I started when sort of the economy was kind of like where it was now. So December '07, I graduated, and everyone was kind of looking over their shoulder as far as what's happening. And one thing that I always had the mentality is I take on everything, and I know everyone's watching me, just like Mark said. So even I remember I basically started working. I took an assignment in Toledo, Ohio, scanning employee records. I didn't turn down that work. And what happened from that was I worked as hard as I could. I knew, this really wasn't kind of what I went to law school for, but you know what? I ended up getting a mentor out of it. I ended up getting somebody that she was in charge of the national tax practice of Ernst & Young. This just happened to be her client, and she needed people to go there. And she said, "Hey, Matt, you're doing a good job. Can you want to talk?" And I just started talking with her and becoming friends with her. So you never know like where things are going to take you. Just always keep in mind that someone's watching all the time. So if you do a good job, if you're personable, if you're like have a fluid conversation, talk to people, things kind of have a way of working out, whether it's in work or in your personal life. As far as a mentor, just put yourself out there, be willing to have just a conversation, just small talk, and that leads to something or naturally. That's my kind of advice for finding a mentor. Do good work and just be willing to put yourself out there.
Thank you. Would you suggest that, it depends on sort of, where you are in law school, but if somebody doesn't have a mentor yet, what's a good way for them? Let's say they're a second year student that hasn't really been out, hasn't been able to be employed in the, in a legal situation yet. How do you think they could find a mentor that might help them, as a 2L kind of, when you're done with that first year, it's behind you, you feel like I made it through that. But in first year, they always tell you not to get distracted with lots of stuff. But here I am coming into my second year, and I really want to make something of this year. And I think I would like a mentor. What's a good suggestion about which way to go? What direction should I go?
You want me to answer that, or Mark? Do you want to rotate, or?
Yeah, we'll start. If you want to start, Matt, that's fine.
Okay, cool. So what I would strongly suggest is the Bar Association, Legal Aid, use your nonprofit organizations in Cleveland. There's plenty of them. And it doesn't even have to be law related as far as finding a mentor. Like Mark said, you find mentors in different avenues too. We have a lot of nonprofits here. We have the arts community. There's a lot of places you can sort of just put yourself out there and just introduce yourself to the whole Cleveland community. I would strongly suggest the nonprofit route. So as, for example, with the Bar Association, we have various events like one I was always this is my first year I was in a committee of the Halloween run. That's a good example of something, you don't have to be like prepared to, give this big speech about yourself. You just go to an event. It's, discounted for law school. So I don't even know if it might even be free right now for law students, right? The Halloween run, that's a perfect example. You just basically go up, sign up, and you just go introduce yourself to people and get yourself out there. There's no other way to get a mentor than having to put yourself out there. I remember that was really hard for me when I started, because I was, like I said in the beginning, I wanted to be an accountant at first, and now I'm like a pension lawyer. We're not really known for our outgoing personalities. So we kind of had to learn to be that person that could go and just start a conversation. And that's really valuable in not just law, but in life in general, I'd say.
So Mary, can I jump in? Because I'm sort of the introvert's guide to getting yourself out there. I am not naturally an extrovert. I am very introverted. And my advice to you is join things and volunteer. You don't have to be a great extrovert to sit on a committee at the Bar Association. Like Mark said, you can show up, the material, you're able to contribute meaningfully, and you don't have to be, working a cocktail hour somewhere. There is a selfish plug for the membership committee. There is a program called Bar Buddies. You can be set up with a mentor, someone from the CMBA who's volunteered to act as a mentor. And you know, in those kind of situations, mentors do all sorts of things. They take you to events. They introduce you to other people. They help you get yourself out there. And I am not an extrovert by any sense of the word. And I've had several of my mentors take me places, introduce me to people. So that when I now walk into a function at the CMBA, I know the people in the room and I don't have that problem anymore. But that would be my advice. Join, and volunteer.
Mark, do you have anything to add to that conversation?
Sure. I thought those comments are spot on by Kathleen and Matt. As a 2L, I would take advantage of all the resources you have. So inevitably, there's a tremendous amount of lunchtime speakers. There's probably a number of evening speakers. I know, when I was in law school, they used to have debates. I did an urban planning degree at Cleveland State, so they had mayoral debates there, different presentations. So just try and attend those. And afterwards, if you see the presenters or panelists, go up and introduce yourself. If it's something that you think you'd like to follow up on, ask for a card. And I think if you do that so many times, it will become easier, number one. So even if you are more introverted, the first or second time might be a little awkward. Third or fourth time, you'll be a veteran. And then once you move that to, say, coffee or next time they're on campus, that's kind of when you start to solidify if it's a good feel. You will, like as Matt said, you guys will start to build your own relationship. You might remind them of themselves when they were a second-year law student. You might have the same interest, and you just start to build from there. It's very organic. But I would take advantage of all of those resources, rather than go to the library and study. You can always do that at 7 or 8 at night, but go to the presentation by whomever's speaking, state senator so-and-so, or someone who's an alumni there who maybe started their own software company. Just get out and meet people, and from there it will become easier.
Yeah, some of the law schools have alumni mentoring programs that are more formal as a way that's really easy to get engaged with somebody. I think the other thing too is one of the things that we and Kathleen talked about the membership committee, a couple of developments. We had really planned on bringing this type of programming out to your schools this spring. Our practice sections, our lawyers like our panel today, meeting you at your school. Obviously with COVID and the shutdowns, we've had to go to this virtual, but when things go back to normal, if ever again, our plan is to actually be on your campus. So, making it easier for you to interact. A lot of our programs will buy you lunch or we'll buy some sort of meal to go with it, but we want to be on your campuses and have you have a chance to directly talk to people in different practice areas. And I would say this really for 2Ls and 3Ls, this is a great opportunity. You don't have to go far to meet lawyers. They're going to be right on campus and accessible. And there are some practice areas now. Matt and I were talking earlier today. There's some practice areas now where there really is demand and opportunities for you to learn about areas where really truly there is opportunity to step right in. And those are also opportunities, I think, when you talk to lawyers at your school or you talk to lawyers in a particular field, they're always happy to talk about what they do and why they like what they do and share that information with you. So again, I encourage you to keep an eye out as you move back into law school in the fall and next spring. And the other thing is we started these pop-up, we call them mini bars. And these are going to be spread around. We're going to have one near the campus of Case Law School, and that got canceled in March, obviously, but these are going to come back, and these are informal, almost spontaneous. You don't have to really register far in advance, but a way for you to informally interact with folks from the Bar Association and from the legal profession in a very comfortable setting. And we've had a few of those, and they've been well populated by new lawyers, law students, and veteran lawyers like our panel here, our bar buddies have gone and met their bar buddy at these. So there's a great deal that we're going to do in all sorts of different forums. And just keep an eye out for that. You know, if you're a member here, you'll get e-blasts and e-bulletins about what's going on. Talk to your career services department and student services. There's just a ton going on that, like I said, I think you'll feel like you'll miss out if you don't jump in. And those are the opportunities I think that will provide you with a natural link to mentors as you're in law school. And as you're thinking about kind of where you want to go in the profession. And Matt, I don't know if you want to share any news with them. Just we were talking about tax law, pension law, and estate planning. Those are areas right now where we hear from our veteran practitioners that there's nobody other than Matt at his age kind of generationally doing that kind of work. So I think the good.
I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
You can learn, right? You can learn from mentors. What's going on, and how might I find a job, especially in today's economy and the ripple effect. And maybe it doesn't seem interesting to you until you get into it. So Matt, what about some of those career options out there that in a tough economy, students might want to pursue or look for mentors to talk more about those practice areas?
Oh, sure, no problem. Well, and pension law, I tell you, there's very, like, I'm one of the youngest practitioners in Cleveland, I would say. A lot of them are 60s, 70s. It just hasn't been like it. And employee benefits, just not something people kind of think about. But there's a lot of companies that have, like every big company has a 401k plan. Every big company has payroll. Every big company has this need. And there's basically in my field, I always see there's a big gap that's growing even bigger. It's kind of tricky to get into, like, my area. It's just basically you need to. How I started is I took tax classes and I was interested in tax. So like I said, I started in a tax boutique firm and it kind of got me into there because I just had one project. So if you're interested in, like, employee benefits or tax, I'd probably say take your tax classes. I think I remember in Cleveland State we had 1 year where we had Cleveland Marshall. We had 1 year with an ERISA class in the semester. We actually had like 20 people sign up for that, which was pretty amazing. But it's really if you want to get in my area, you take your tax classes and you do, I would say, look for like an internship, whether it's paid or unpaid, with a tax boutique firm. There's plenty of them. Or you can look at the accounting firms. We have some really big accounting firms here in Cleveland. We have Ernst & Young, PwC, KPMG. They all have people that do this sort of work that I do. And, you don't necessarily, it is a good career actually to stay with them for your whole career, but you could end up and basically move on your career and go into a law firm if you so choose. But it's really, just take your tax classes first and then look for that sort of part-time volunteer opportunity, because it's kind of, you got to start somewhere. And that's how I sort of started, just looking at a tax boutique firm. Yeah.
Anybody else? Like, I had a question earlier today about, in a relationship with a mentor, sort of, is there almost the etiquette, when do I become a pest as a mentee, or what's appropriate etiquette in the mentoring relationship between a mentee and a mentor? I want to have a great relationship, but I don't want to overstep. But I still, and I don't want to avoid, like Kathleen said, some people totally avoid when they ought to be calling back. How do you see that relationship, and sort of how do you walk the fine line between, I know my mentor is extremely busy practicing law, but I have a couple questions. So what would you advise somebody in terms of working that relationship and not overstepping the boundaries?
I think it all depends on who's the mentor and who's the mentee and what kind of relationship they set up. I've had mentors where it was very much strictly professional. They really didn't want to be, well, not that they weren't interested, but they just didn't want to involve themselves with the personal side of things. And then I've had the opposite where, they want, it's a much more developed relationship. And, you can talk about what is it like to be a new mom and trying to go back to work and being a lawyer, and how do you manage that, those sorts of things. So I think it really depends on the relationship you build with the person and the personality of the person that you're with and what you want to get out of the mentoring relationship.
Anybody else have any advice about that sort of protocol of mentoring relationships, best practice, relationship building, and not stepping too far?
I have a few cents, Mary. I think you should set those parameters early in the relationship. So as you start to develop that appreciation, maybe you join a nonprofit, as Matt said, and you always gravitate towards the same person. They ask how your day is going, how's work. As you start to feel that this is turning into something that can go into a mentor-mentee, I would kind of, set that term. Say, hey, Sarah, I really enjoyed our conversations. You've given me some good things to think about 3 years into my own practice. Would you mind getting coffee sometime? And as you do that more and more, then I think you set more direct parameters. Would it be okay in your schedule if we met once a quarter? What's the best way to communicate? How about every time we meet, I send you a quick email 3 days ahead of time to give you some time with some questions I might have. So the easier you can make it on that person and less taxing, I think the better, because you're going to get the best advice. You're going to steer the conversation with what's important to you. The other thing I would encourage you to do is look at it as a two-way street. Conceptually, what you're asking someone to do is take away from their busy practice, their busy day, their family, their friends, and their extracurriculars they like to spend time with you. And that's not to scare anyone. It's just for them to understand the seriousness of it and the candidness of it. So you need to, always bring your A game, in my opinion. And number two, there has to be something in it for that person. And I'm not saying you give them, slide them an envelope of cash. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is help them along that journey. So if you meet and you receive advice and within 6 months that advice comes to fruition, shoot them an email, give them a card, a thank you card, do something nice. Hey, lunch is on me today at the Galleria. Whatever it is, show your appreciation so you continue that relationship as a two-way street. It's not just you taking, it's you showing your appreciation for their time and candidness and advice.
Yeah, and I would add to Mark's, get to know them too. So how are your kids doing? How's everything going? How's everything on your end? Don't make it a one-way conversation. Make sure they know that you care about them too. Make it both ways. It's really important, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I've mentored in a lot of different sorts of programs and at the Bar Association. And, I think, it feels like you, as a mentor, you get a lot out of it. I think the frustrating part can be sometimes when you don't hear back or there's a gap of time where, I kind of sent you out to do something or you were going to go try something and then I don't hear back. And I understand that you're busy with school and other projects, but it's nice to, even if it's just an email, just say, hey, you know what, I went to that, program at school and it was really interesting and I'm glad I did it. And here's my feedback. So I think that polite, and that also helps you develop your networking skills, your follow-up skills, the things that you need. It's actually skill building. And as a mentor, we really, you don't mentor people if you don't want to. It's number one. You have a love for people and you want to make sure that you're there for people and there to help. I think it's important that you be respectful of that and stay in touch. And I mentor in the Supreme Court program, and I have had 4 mentors so far, or mentees so far, and no matter how far away we get from the first one, we still stay in touch and very interested in where they're going in their career and in their lives. And I think make sure you give mentors enough credit. Once you start that relationship, they really do want to know how you're doing and what you're doing, and you know, that sort of check-in that's not so overbearing, but just even an email every now and then. It's a great way to catch up, and when time opens up on the calendar, it's time for coffee or let's grab lunch. But make sure that you're continuing to work with your mentor, and engaging, and not just kind of hanging out there, because they'll move on. I mean, they've got other things to do, and you might have missed a great opportunity to have a connection that can last longer than, you know, than a short time, and that will actually be productive for you. Anybody else? Like, why, you know, why, a couple words just about why you like being a mentor and serving as a mentor. Mark, I know you do a lot of mentoring. What do you get out of it? Why do you do it, and what do you get out of it?
You know, I enjoy the interaction of it. You know, I think anyone who has ever started down the path, and all of us, including you, Mary, at some point didn't know what we know now. And so I truly take pride in knowing no questions off limits. You know, I remember one question that, you know, was embarrassing as a young attorney. I received my bar number and I was sent to do a pretrial in bankruptcy court. And back then, bankruptcy court was in Key Tower. So I had this long description of what I need to do, what I need to read, how I need to be prepared. And my last question was, where's bankruptcy court? And the partner, she erupted in laughter. She thought that was the funniest question ever. Now, it's such a simple question to me. I you know, didn't know where bankruptcy court was. But so now I like that anyone can ask any questions. Don't feel ashamed. Don't feel embarrassed. We all have been there. So I kind of like meeting someone and having them open up and say, here's really what I want to do. Mark, you seem to have my best interest at heart, which I always do, and I always try to. You know, how can you help me get here? Or, you know, what are some things you can give me words of encouragement when I just had a bad day? Or, so I really enjoy that kind of step one, because once the ball starts rolling downhill, they're making great progress. You know, you look up and it's 4 years later and they're doing well in their job. They might have gotten promoted. Maybe they went in-house. And you know, to me, I'm very happy to see how that evolves. So that's what I get out of mentoring.
Matt, how about you? You know, you're relatively young, but I know you do mentoring, and you've offered yourself here as a mentor. Hopefully we'll have some pension practitioners coming your way. But
Yeah.
why do you mentor, and why do you think it's important to you?
Well, I really enjoy mentoring because I generally just like helping people, honestly. I really get a joy out of answering questions and seeing people succeed. And in fact, I don't know, sometimes I feel like, you know, I help somebody and it gives me like this bragging. It makes me feel like really good, like seeing someone else really succeed well. And it just is kind of like a special feeling. I know that, you know, we kind of all went through our life story and how we kind of didn't know like exactly where we'd end up, and just to, you know, be along someone's career, someone's path, and sort of their journey throughout this whole law career. It kind of gives me that special feeling, I guess, just to seeing them succeed, seeing them work through their issues and accomplishing and growing. It just makes me feel great, I'd say. That's why I do it.
Great. How about you, Kathleen?
I think I would echo Matt's comments. Yeah, I really enjoy it, but and that's one of the reasons I do it. But you know, I also do it because I can remember what it was like to be a law student, and there was this weird exclusive club called attorneys. Pass a test to be one of them, and you know, what was that like? And you know, once you're in the club, like, what does that feel like? And you know, and I remember what it felt like to practice for the first several years of my career. And frankly, now looking back on it, having no idea what I was doing. And, you know, if I can help somebody not feel like so awkward coming into the attorney club, if you will, or to help them not feel as if they're, you know, totally just off base or don't know what they're doing, particularly their first few years of practice, that makes me feel that much better that, you know, somebody else got help and didn't have to go through all those feelings that I went through when I came out of law school and started to practice.
Mm-hmm.
Any words of advice? We'll wrap up here, but any words of advice for for students right now and new graduates that are kind of facing, even a disruption in when the bar exam is, it's crazy times. It's crazy times for everybody, right? We've all had to attempt to adjust to things that we've never had to do before. And as you're in law school, there is a lot of pressure anyway, and you tend to be a highly anxious person trying to get everything done. Do you have any mentoring advice from your point of view for them? How do they get through this period and land on their feet, during this tough time?
I think the first part is, understand everyone's going through that tough time. And so I look at it as a positive opportunity, not a negative hindrance. If anybody's watched the 10-part series of The Last Dance, when Michael Jordan had a bad game, everyone knew he was coming back and he was going to drop 50 on you the next day. So I think you have to have that mindset. As bad as it is, you're confident in your skills. You're going to work very hard. You're going to be the best person you can be. And typically the chips are going to fall positively if you put all those together in a formula. I would encourage you to, again, get out of your comfort zone, as we talked about with Kathleen and Matt and some of the comments here, and take the reins of your career. I mean, this is you here. This is your most important asset you have, yourself. And you need to construct how you want to be, what you want to be, how you want to get there, and use all the resources available to you. We've talked about numerous things at the CMBA. I'm on a couple different committees there. They do a great job of networking, social, interacting, and there's different buckets. If you're a young lawyer, join the young lawyer section. Go to some of those great events outdoors, whether it's Heinen's or in the park or otherwise. Just get engaged, and you'll have a world of difference. You'll make tremendous progress.
Thank you, Matt. How about you? Any sort of career advice for this particular weird time?
Yeah, it's weird, that's for sure. I would say, just again, kind of echoing what we're saying, just being out there is kind of difficult with like everything being closed, but there are a lot of virtual events you can go to, and just look outside as far as possibility for mentors. Look at, not just focus on lawyers, focus on your friends that are going to business school, focus on your friends, focus on your network as a whole, because there's going to be people in your network that you can connect with that are going to possibly, you never know that when that job opportunity happens, you never know when, when something presents itself to you. So you want to kind of just go through your network and kind of see if there's anyone that has like one of your friends that have a family member that's a lawyer. Talk to them and see what their thoughts are, and just kind of just take it all in. Just imagine this is just like one big gigantic thing of information that you're just trying to like gather as much as possible. So use your network, try to grow your network, go to events to grow your network. It's all about networking now. That's what kind of what helped everyone else through the last crisis.
Kathleen, words of advice?
I think my word of advice is stay connected. Stay connected to the people you're going through law school with. Stay connected with the people who you're studying for the bar with. They're going through it also. And they're one of my colleagues, when I was talking to her about speaking today, she said, emphasize to them that mentorship is very important and absolutely they should be involved in it, but also don't forget mentors amongst your peer groups, and don't lose connections amongst your peer groups, because 5 years from now, 7 years from now, who knows, one of your peer groups might be in a position where they can be helpful to you. So I think staying connected with the people who you're going to school with or studying for the bar with is very important. My other piece of advice was take advantage of the time. You've got a little bit of time. Things are kind of quiet. We're all stuck indoors. Use this time to, like Mark said, really evaluate like what you're thinking, where you'd like to go, and who can I talk with, or who can I connect with to get me started along that path. And then, we're all virtual right now. If you're an introvert like me, it's easy, it's easier to write an email and say, hi, this is who I am. Can I have a phone call with you? Or will you meet with me on Zoom? And it might be a little less intimidating. But I would definitely use the time that we have right now when you've got a captive audience of all of us lawyers sitting in our houses to reach out and connect and make those relationships.
Well, on behalf of the Bar Association, I really would like to thank our three panelists today, Mark Young, Matt Secrist, Kathleen Nitschke. Again, I'm Mary Groth. If you have any questions about mentoring, if you want to get engaged at the bar, you can reach out to me. Anybody on our team here at the Bar Association, we're happy to help you get involved. And I really appreciate your time today, your great words of advice, and we look forward to meeting you in person, hopefully soon, but reach out to us using technology. We're here for you, and we want you to succeed, and we hope you'll stay here in Cleveland and be a Cleveland lawyer along with us. It's a great place to practice law and a great place to have a career. So thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon. We appreciate you tuning in today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was nice meeting you, Mark.
I didn't see. Oh,
I think it's still on. I didn't turn them off yet.
we have to turn them on.